Cooking, laundry, caregiving, it's all your job as the housekeeper. If you don't like it, let's divorce and you can leave. Patrick clearly called me a housekeeper. So that was your plan from the beginning. To use me as free labor, a housekeeper, on top of caring for your mother. You became a wife when we married, so it's only natural. If you don't like it, you're not fit to be a wife. Get out, I can divorce you anytime. It seemed like an ultimatum as Patrick said this with a sneer. Listen, I am an elite from a top company. You are barely managing that pathetic store because I'm supporting you. Think about that. I understand. It seemed my soft reply reached Patrick. As long as you understand. Remember, you do as I say. I didn't answer him and simply turned around, whispering softly once more. Then you're fired. What? As a result of my actions, the elite husband. My name is Amy Cooper. I am 30 years old. I own a restaurant. Being a young owner is often praised, but originally the restaurant was my father's, and I just took over from him. The chef, who has been with us since my father's time, actually cooks and preserves the taste from when we opened. With the help of such long-standing staff, I've managed to keep the restaurant going. I am still learning. I took over the restaurant at the age of 22, right after graduating from university. I studied economics, which I thought prepared me well, but reality often deviates from the textbook. I've made several mistakes and felt quite down at times, but I've managed to keep the restaurant running. I consider myself quite fortunate. About 5 years after taking over the restaurant, a man started visiting the restaurant. He would later become my husband, Patrick. One day, several men in suits came to our restaurant. One of them was Patrick, who liked the taste and started visiting regularly. They were employees of a major food manufacturer, exploring various restaurants for research. I've been interested in this restaurant for a while, but it's either too prominent in town or too far on the outskirts, so I ended up passing by. Yes, I understand. It's kind of in an awkward location. I said that, and Patrick smiled shyly. He seemed honest and genuinely nice. Our restaurant is indeed located in such a place. But the taste is reliable, and many have fallen in love with it, continuing to patronize it for many years. The taste is great. I've become a fan. True to his word, Patrick became a regular and often chatted with me, the owner. Patrick graduated from a top university and worked for a famous company. He was the picture-perfect elite. I had never been close to such a person before. Not only was Patrick competent, but he also looked good. Tall and handsome, he was undoubtedly popular. Patrick was 7 years my senior, and at the time, he was 34. I assumed he was married, but he laughed and said he was single. Work, always work. I've been so focused on it that I reached this age without realizing it. It's quite sloppy of me. His casual demeanor, humorous storytelling, and gentle tone were unlike an elite's. Before I knew it, I had fallen for him. It must have been unrequited love. From his side, I was just a restaurant owner and a regular customer. Yet, unexpectedly, he proposed one day. Amy, would you consider dating me with marriage in mind? I couldn't believe it. My heart raced, and I was in disbelief. How could such a wonderful person have feelings for me? It felt like a dream. As if a prince on a white horse had come to sweep me away. I felt like the protagonist of a fairy tale, intoxicated by the dream, and I answered. Yes. A year later, Patrick and I got married. But this fairy tale didn't end with happily ever after. After we married, the second chapter of our story turned as dark as a book painted black. Hey, you're my wife now. You understand what that means, right? Until then, Patrick had always called me Amy, but he started speaking this way soon after we registered our marriage. Yeah, I'm your wife now because we're married. I was confused by the sudden change in his tone and could only respond that way. Then Patrick suddenly shouted, "What kind of response is that? I'm your husband, you should reply more politely with honorifics. A wife should respect and honor her husband, don't you even know that?" I was too shocked to reply immediately. It was as if someone else had taken over Patrick. From prince to tyrant. Which witch had cast such a spell? Listen, I'm an elite, you know that? You have to become a wife worthy of me. I'll train you for that, so be prepared. From that day, Patrick continued to command me. First, he demanded perfect housekeeping from me. Make sure the room is perfectly tidy at all times, so it's ready for anyone who might visit. That's the wife's job. Don't embarrass me. Having grown up in a restaurant, honestly, our home was never in perfect order. My father was always in the kitchen, and my mother helped in the shop. It was impossible to keep the house perfectly tidy. Both my parents did clean up when they noticed something, but managing the restaurant while raising me, even many hands weren't enough. My paternal grandparents lived far away, but during busy times, my maternal grandparents took care of me. That was just enough to keep our life going. I have the restaurant to run as well, it's just too much. Don't make excuses before even trying. Don't you even want to try? I said I would do my best for now, and managed to settle the conversation, but after actually trying, I realized it was impossible. You know, I have to manage the restaurant too, can't I outsource some housework? It's not that I didn't want to do any housework at all. I just wanted to hire a housekeeper for the parts one couldn't manage, but Patrick didn't like the idea. Why should we waste money like that? The best thing about a housewife is that she works for free. I was shocked by his words. A housewife's merit is to be used for free. So that's how Patrick saw me. That's when I clearly understood. That small restaurant, who knows when it might go under? You're lucky to have found a way to be supported by me. Be grateful and serve me well. During our courtship, he had praised me for taking over the management from my parents at such a young age. That was one of the reasons I fell for him. Though it's a small shop, it's precious to me, and he used to praise my determination to keep it going. Just keep the shop insured. If needed, we can sell it. Even a place like that must be worth something. But if it starts losing money, quit immediately. It's not worth running at a loss. That's how far he went. That was your intention. I will never let go of that shop no matter what. Just do your best. But don't forget that I'm allowing you to keep it as a hobby out of my kindness. It means I care about you that much. Patrick said this with a laugh. From that day, I started to consider divorce. However, I still had some love left for Patrick, and I wanted to prove him wrong. I believed that he would understand someday. Driven by these mixed feelings, I worked desperately. Indeed, it's a small shop sustained by regulars. Nowadays, people often choose chain restaurants where they can find the same taste everywhere, which is why big chains thrive. But there are still people who seek nostalgic flavors. That's why I want to keep that shop forever. My desire to do so will never fade. While maintaining a seemingly peaceful marital life on the surface, I worked hard for the day I could prove Patrick wrong. Patrick half mocked me as he laughed and said, "Wow, you're really trying hard. I can't believe that shop is still going. I thought it would fail soon." Well, it's fine, as long as you take care of the house, you can keep it going. I was doing it without being told. Every day, I woke up early to prepare breakfast for Patrick, who left for work, and after seeing him off, I'd rush out of the house. I worked busily at the shop all day, and after closing, I'd shop and return home to make dinner and clean. When Patrick came home, I served him dinner, prepared the bath, did the laundry, prepared for the next day, and cleaned up any remaining work. I trimmed my sleep hours, scheduled my days tightly, and moved efficiently to manage everything. If the house ever gets dirty, I'll make you quit the shop right away and then sell it." I felt that Patrick was just waiting for that day. He probably married me intending to have a free housekeeper with assets. Back then, I was head over heels for Patrick. Knowing how I felt, he must have thought I would never oppose him. That's why he chose me. "I'm surprised you're working so hard on the shop. I thought you'd only have eyes for me after we got married." "I feel betrayed." Patrick said that one day. I felt betrayed, thinking he had chosen me knowing who I was. I wanted to say that, but I swallowed my words. And then the situation worsened. "It seems my mother has broken a bone and is hospitalized." "Your mother?" Patrick's parents live in his home state next door. I don't want to say it, but like Patrick, they aren't exactly pleasant people. Patrick is our pride. He graduated from a top university and works for a top company as an elite. You, having been chosen by such a Patrick, should be grateful and serve us well. You don't realize your luck. Really, you should appreciate to us, the parents of such a Patrick. Exactly. Education really hasn't reached the daughter of a diner. That was the first thing they said when we met. Not just to me, but to my parents as well. I was about to retort angrily, but Patrick intervened and settled it, so I kept quiet at that moment. Now, Amy is still young. It's natural she lacks in some areas. Think of it as potential for growth. At that stage, I should have realized the true nature of this family, but back then, I mistook Patrick's defense as him being on my side. And every time something happened, my in-laws continued to make snide remarks. Really, why would Patrick choose the daughter of a diner? Right, with Patrick, he could have married a daughter of a president or vice president. Amy, think about that and make sure you do your filial duties to us. My in-laws believed that only people working in big companies like Patrick are first class, and they seemed to think less of those in service industries or other professions. But even so, it's unfortunate that my mother-in-law got injured. I thought I should at least visit her. That's when Patrick's next words took me by surprise. "It's a femur fracture. She'll need surgery followed by a hospital stay and rehabilitation. You'll take care of my mother, won't you?" "What? But all hospitals are still restricting visits, right? I might be able to visit or bring some items, but I can't take care of her." "Who said anything about in the hospital?" "I mean after she's discharged and comes to live with us." I didn't understand what he meant for a moment. While I was silently thinking, Patrick made his intentions clear. "You're slow, aren't you? When my mother is discharged, my parents will live here with us." "What? What, you have a problem with that?" "Of course, I do. I was already fed up with living just with Patrick, let alone the thought of living with those in-laws. I cannot take care of your mother." I firmly refused. "I have the store to run, it's impossible. It would be better to leave your mother's care to professionals. Why should we pay someone else when you're here? Then quit the store. Sell it and use that money for the family." Patrick made an outrageous demand. "I will not sell the shop. And I won't take care of your mother. Cooking, laundry, caregiving, it's all your job as the housekeeper. If you don't like it, let's divorce and you can leave." Patrick clearly called me a housekeeper. "So that was your plan from the beginning? To use me as free labor, a housekeeper, and on top of that, to take care of your mother. You became a wife when we married, so it's only natural. If you don't like it, you're not fit to be a wife. Get out, I can divorce you anytime." It seemed like an ultimatum as Patrick said this with a sneer. "Listen, I am an elite from a top company. You are barely managing that pathetic store because I'm supporting you. Think about that." "I understand." It seemed my reply reached Patrick. "As long as you understand. Remember, you do as I say." I didn't answer him and simply turned around, whispering softly once more. "Then you're fired." "What? He didn't hear well this time and asked again, but I didn't repeat myself. There are several preparations to make, it's impossible right now. Ah, there's still time until my mother is discharged. They say she needs to stay in the hospital for at least a month. If you manage by then, that's fine. Patrick thought I had meekly agreed and smiled contentedly as he went off to bed. I had been making various preparations for the past 2 years. All for this moment. Yet, I had still hoped somewhere deep down that Patrick would return to the man he was before we got married. I had chosen him because I loved him so much, and I didn't want to believe that those happy days were a lie. But my hopes were consistently dashed. I had to make a decision. I was ready. Hello, it's me. Yes, it didn't work out. No choice then, let's take action. I called someone and decided to move forward. A month later, a piece of news made the economic section of the newspaper. It reported that a large amount of stock in the food manufacturer Patrick works for had been bought, and it seemed it would come under the umbrella of a certain restaurant group. What is this? Patrick, frustrated, pulled the newspaper from side to side and tore it in half. This is no joke. Our company is top tier. And now it's being acquired by some lousy diner group. He crumpled the torn newspaper and threw it against the wall. Damn it, what's going to happen now? This can't be true. As if waking from a nightmare, he turned on the TV, only to find the same news being broadcast. It seemed the acquisition was indeed a reality. Damn it, why is this happening? He then slumped onto the sofa and started to furiously ruffle his hair. What's done is done, here, take this. What's this? When he saw what I was offering, his eyes widened as if they might pop out of his head. He seemed utterly shocked. What is this? It's called a divorce form. I can see that without being told. What do you mean by giving me this? He then crumpled up the divorce form and threw it as well. After the newspaper, this? But no matter how much you crumple it, nothing will go back to how it was. Why divorce then? Explain the reason. Astonishing, have you forgotten? You were the one who said divorce. Patrick fell silent, possibly recalling his own words. I won't take care of your mother. I won't live with her. You said if I didn't like it, we should divorce, right? I did say that. But I said it because I thought you wouldn't listen otherwise, it was just a figure of speech. So it was a threat then. Patrick didn't reply. I married you because I loved you and trusted you. But I've been deceived and betrayed over and over. That's why I've decided to divorce. I took another divorce form from the file and placed it in front of Patrick. There's a spare, so feel free to crumple this one up too. If it runs out, you can get more, or nowadays, it's easy to download and print. Patrick stared at the paper placed before him again. This is a lie, right? He looked at me with pleading eyes. No, it's real, the truth. You're not that kind of woman, right? You wouldn't do something so cruel when I'm down. It seemed he wouldn't accept the situation easily. What you've done to me, and tried to do. I wonder which is worse. I made sure to let Patrick hear these words clearly. Remember what you told me when we got married? That a wife should respect and honor her husband. Do you remember? Patrick didn't reply. I respected you before we were married, and that's why I decided to marry you. But after hearing those words, my respect for you disappeared. Someone who tramples on others is also trampling on their own feelings. Patrick looked down, silent. You thought of me only as a housekeeper who could be used for free, and the shop I care so much about as an asset to be liquidated. I realized that, but still, I loved you. Amy. Patrick looked up at me, his face filled with hope. I'm sorry. I didn't realize you cared so much about me. That's why I ended up showing off and saying those things. Please forgive me. Patrick, tears streaming down his face, grasped my hand. I'll change my ways. So could you give me another chance? I'll truly cherish you this time. I'm sorry. I pulled my hand away from Patrick's grasp. Why? We loved each other, didn't we? We can still make it work. No, it's impossible now. I've given up on you. That's why I decided to buy your company. What? Patrick looked at me, confused. The large dining group that acquired your company, which employs 1,900 full-time employees, I'm the president of it. Unfortunately, I have to let you go. No, this isn't the time for jokes. What are you talking about? Are you crazy? Patrick said that half-jokingly, but it was indeed the truth. Well, we can talk about that later. Here, take this. Patrick took the envelope I handed him with a puzzled look. He checked the contents and let out a strange scream. What is this? It was evidence of Patrick's infidelity. The document contained results from a detective agency, along with several photos. The women include a secretary, a subordinate's wife, a new graduate just out of university, a client's female employee, a nightclub worker, and who else was it? The list was incredible. Patrick was good-looking and, with his elite status, it's no wonder women were drawn to him. It's impressive, isn't it? Too many to count on both hands. I'll be seeking compensation from all of them, and of course from the women involved too. Hey. What? Patrick, looking at the documents and photos, trembled with a pale face. He tried to speak to me, but seemed at a loss for words. The places and times of the affairs are a big issue. Many of them were during work hours. This could be considered a breach of trust against the company. The documents detailed the times and places of supposed business outings, business trips, and client entertainment, which were actually times he spent with women. Have you been investigating me like this all along? Yes, I have. That's low. Patrick threw the documents and photos at me. You used the money I earned to investigate me like this? No, I haven't spent a single penny of your money. That's a lie. There's no way you have that kind of money. Patrick, being an elite with a high salary, had treated me as nothing more than a free housekeeper, but he had been contributing financially to our household. You know I'm the owner of the restaurant. Yeah, that nearly bankrupt, barely breaking even place. It's like a hobby, isn't it? What kind of owner are you? It's true that if you look just at the management, the restaurant doesn't seem very prosperous. But there's more to it than that. I let Patrick in on the real situation. That restaurant was being used for gathering information. What are customers currently ordering? What sells well? That's what I was researching. That restaurant was one my father started with my mother. It all started from that first one, and now it has grown into a major chain with locations not just in the US, but also overseas. The company that acquired Patrick's this time is the parent company of that restaurant chain. It can't be. But it was no lie. That location was ideal for the kind of research it was used for. The initial success of the restaurant was undoubtedly due to my father's skill. But beyond that, understanding the customer's preferences allowed us to expand significantly. You never said your family's restaurant was like that. Have you been deceiving me? I didn't deceive you, I just didn't say anything. When Patrick and I started dating and began to consider marriage, my father advised me to keep quiet and watch. Looking back, I think my father saw your true nature. He said if you didn't change after marrying, that would be the time to tell you. At that time, I would have married Patrick no matter what anyone said. I think that's why he told me that. And what I told Patrick when we got married wasn't a lie. My father had become ill and it was difficult for him to continue working. So, my uncle took over as president and my father was practically retired. So when I said I took over the restaurant because my father was ill, it was the truth. He is stable now, but he has undergone major surgery and received intensive treatment. I was young, having just graduated from university when I took over the restaurant because it was too soon for me to be president. It was also for learning purposes. Even though I studied business administration at university, I lacked practical experience. I was also told that if I failed at running the restaurant, I wouldn't be acknowledged as a successor. So I worked hard to keep the restaurant going and to earn recognition to take over. My father probably told me to keep quiet because he was worried about me getting married to some strange man who might take over or destroy the company. But I believed in Patrick and wanted to prove that I could be honest with him. Well, that expectation was betrayed. My father also told me this: if you turned out not to be the man I thought he was, then I should settle things myself. It makes sense. I couldn't manage a large company if I couldn't handle something like this. So I decided if you didn't show remorse, I would make sure you suffered for these past 2 years. I hoped you would go back to the way you were, but... I sighed and picked up my smartphone to make a call. After I quickly said what was needed, I hung up. Soon the entrance chime rang, and I unlocked the door to let them in. Who is that? Just watch and see. Soon the doorbell rang again, and I invited the person into the room. President. The man entering was the former president of the company that would now be mine. The former president greeted me with a stiff expression. Please go ahead. The former president silently handed Patrick a piece of paper. Termination notice. It was an official document. Patrick was being terminated for misconduct, including meeting with women during work hours and charging personal expenses as business entertainment. I had promised to continue the presidency in exchange for allowing Patrick's termination, and the former president had agreed to these terms. Even small things add up to a major crime. What you did constitutes a serious breach of trust. It's only natural that you're being fired. Patrick was stunned, but I had no intention of forgiving him. Now that you understand, could you please leave? Why should I? This is my home, isn't it? This place is a rental, right? The landlord has said you need to leave. They can no longer rent to you. Patrick looked confused. I decided to explain further. I bought this apartment. And it seems you've forgotten, but the lease was only until last month. So, you no longer have the right to live here, and I do not plan to renew the lease. Patrick stood there, stunned. We still need to decide who gets the assets and the furniture, but for now, I don't want to see your face. Can you go back to your parents' house? Your mother should be getting out of the hospital soon, right? My mother-in-law had been hospitalized for about a month and was scheduled to be discharged in a few days. Why don't you go back and prepare for your mother's return? I will contact you through my lawyer for everything else. Thank you. I handed Patrick over to the former president. If you come back, I'll report it as trespassing to the police. The divorce isn't final yet, but if the landlord says no, then it's no. Patrick left the room silently, escorted by the former president. There's still much to do, but for now, this phase is over. After Patrick returned home, his parents, having heard about the divorce, were insistent in their communication. Amy, I had no idea you were such an impressive person. Why didn't you tell us? You truly are a daughter-in-law to be proud of. The divorce must be a joke, right? You loved Patrick so much. Can't you forgive a man's nature and overlook 1 or 2 affairs? Initially, they were quite arrogant, but when they realized I was firm about the divorce, they started making threats. Because of you, Patrick has been fired. What are you going to do about that? We'll demand compensation. What you did is unforgivable. Hiring a detective to spy on your husband's behavior, what will people think if this gets out? When I firmly told them to go ahead with their demands for compensation or to leak information, they resorted to pleading. I'm truly sorry, Amy. It felt like you were taking Patrick away from us, and I acted spitefully. Please understand, what will we do if you leave us? If you're upset, I apologize. So please, forgive Patrick. If you can't forgive him, what about us? Weren't we family once? Of course, I declined them all. I've said it many times, but I will divorce Patrick. If you continue to bother me, I will speak to the police and consider filing a lawsuit through my lawyer. After actually getting my lawyer to issue a warning, my in-laws finally stopped contacting me. I made sure to claim compensation from Patrick. And I managed to get it all paid out of the assets divided between us. Fortunately, he had savings from his high salary. He has lost his job and savings and now lives back at his parents' home, ironically working in the service industry he once scorned, working from early morning till late at night. I hope he works hard to pay it all off, no matter how many years it takes. I've spoken to the women involved in the affairs, all claimed they were not serious, just with him because he was an elite with money. I made sure they all paid the required compensation to understand the severity of their actions. Hopefully, this will prevent them from repeating the same mistake. Afterward, I officially took over as president from my uncle. I've asked him to take the position of chairman and continue to advise me on various matters. Though my father's condition has stabilized, he's not in a state to work. He seems relieved that he could entrust his company to me and appears to have regained some vigor. Sometimes, he still offers his opinions, seemingly on a whim. I'm grateful for this. My greatest wish is for my parents to live as long as possible. Now, that is my top priority. I regret causing them to worry by getting involved with such a man. I've managed to settle things on my own, and it seems my father now respects me as a business owner. Eventually, I hope to meet someone better and reassure my parents as their daughter, but I'm not thinking about marriage for a while. The company is my child now. I want to grow it larger and more respectable. As a president, I'm just starting to take my first steps. And I believe a bright future shines ahead on this path. Of course, I continue to run the original restaurant. It's the starting point for my parents and for me. It's my very first child that I want to cherish forever. I intend to always treasure it, to never forget my beginnings.